Hi everyone, Greg here from the Laser channel where we learn, create, and share. And today I'm going to be using the Atomstack X40 Max to create this awesome multi-layer shield. This has been a project that I've been wanting to create for a very long time. And when this X40 Max came along, I knew it would be a perfect fit. This project is going to be more focused on the process and the experience of creating the shield project. With that, you're welcome to sit back, relax, grab a beverage, and let's get started. We'll start by checking out the file that I'm going to be working with within Lightburn software. Across the top here, I've got all of my layers that I'm going to be using, and let's start way back in the beginning with the original file down here. And the first thing I'm going to do is Control-C to copy that, Control-V to paste another copy of it. So I'm going to keep this one always as a reference up here. And then this one down here is basically what I'm going to disassemble to get all the different layers that I need. Right now, everything is joined together, and I'll navigate to the top and ungroup everything. In fact, I'm going to delete that reference out of there. And the very first thing that I want is the base layer, the outline of the shield. And now I've got that selected, and I'm going to Control-C and Control-V to paste that. I'll copy that and paste it, and now I've got layer number 2, the frame of the shield. And lastly, I want to make the crest for the shield. And for that, I'm going to take just this inner part and copy and paste that. And what I want to do is make this a little bit smaller. In fact, now I can come up here and see what that looks like. This is going to have a little bit of a reveal around it. And I think that looks okay. I think I'll actually make it a little bit smaller. If I hold down Control, it will enlarge or shrink it off of the center point of the object. And I like the way that looks. And I'll place that right off to the side here. For the graphic, the dragon that I'm using, I sourced this off of Pixabay.com. It's my favorite source for getting high quality, free images for personal use. If you're going to make this commercially or sell your projects, you do need to contact the artist and make sure that you're set up with the proper license. Now, the last thing that I'd like to do when I zoom in here, I've got all of these circles for the buttons, and what I want to do is just grab one of those and copy it over, and I'm going to move that up here. And right now we're at 0.4 inches, and I think I'm going to make that 0.48 inches in diameter. And then from there, I'm going to make a whole bunch of copies of that. I'm going to make a grid array of that. There we go. Now the reason why I made these a little bit larger is I'm going to cut these out, and they're going to be placed over that. And I'm doing these as just a line engraving. So I'm going to have that score line, if you will, and that'll help provide me making sure that I get these buttons in the correct spot. Pretty straightforward on the shield. And now it's time to go find some material for today's project. Got a couple pieces here, and the first one, the surface looks all right, but you know, I flip it around and I'm just not happy with the wood grain on the back. I've got this other piece, and it looks good on the front and the back despite the light glare. That looks pretty good. I like this one. I'm going to be measuring out to get a usable piece. I do see that there's some screw holes and nail holes that I've got to basically cut out to get the good part of the wood that I want, but that one's going to work. And this next piece, front and back, looks pretty good. This is that cheap plywood that you can get. I'm gonna take a straight edge here and make sure it's pretty flat. That's one of the disadvantages of cheap plywood. Sometimes it can warp over time. And take a quick measurement on here to make sure I've got a usable piece out of this. And this one looks good. And lastly, I've got this 1/8 inch press board, and I've got the dimple side facing us right now, and on the back side is that super smooth surface. And I like the way that that looks, but I think for the crest of the shield, I'm going to go with this dimpled side. It's going to add a really nice element of texture to it, and we can see here up close, this is going to be perfect for the project. I'll use a tape measure and I'm going to get a cut line around all these marks in the wood from screws, and just a quick scribe line is all I need. I don't need anything super perfect. This project is essentially cutting all the material out and draw out the length, making note that I'm measuring from the line I just drew out, and I'll scribe another line. Now for cutting, I'm going to use a cordless jigsaw, and I just have to get the blade installed in there. It's got a nice little quick release in there and a little pull on the blade, make sure it won't come out, and load up a fresh battery pack, and I'm ready to start cutting my material down. Nothing fancy here at the laser channel, just a couple 2x4s on the ground to cut those boards and some foam from a laser machine to kneel on. And I'll get the first board loaded up and set up to do some cutting. I always like watching the sawdust bounce around in front of the blade. It makes some pretty neat little shapes as they vibrate around, and this saw, actually, for being cordless, does an excellent job just chopping through all of this wood. I think the piece I'm cutting now is upwards of about a ½ inch thick, and this saw just glides right through. And I'm off to the 1/4 inch, and again, I'm just watching the line and watching that sawdust dance around. Just one more cut on this press board and I'll have all the materials ready for the project. Here's all the materials that I need, and I'm going to be doing any painting or finishing after I do the cutting out, with the exception of this 1/8 inch press board with that dimpled surface. I'm going to be painting this first because we're going to be engraving that crest, and I want that nice wood to come through that dimpled pattern. I'm not too sure of the paint color scheme I'm going to use, but I do know I'm going to be using Ironlak paint. It goes on really smooth and relatively thick, so it plugs the pores of the wood, so I get nice even coating, and it dries pretty quickly. I'm out behind the recording studio, and here I've decided I'm going to use some silver paint as the base coat, and I'm going to put a lighter coat of the red over the top. I want it to be a nice burgundy color, and to get that deeper color, I'm going to be hitting it very quickly with some black paint. I'll put a nice heavy coat of this silver paint on, and I'm going to go in different directions. Here we've got a nice view of the back of my head. And we're gonna get a little bit of red on here, going a little bit quicker, spraying it a little bit lighter. Once that's done, I'm gonna flip it over to make sure that I get the other side of these little diamond dimples that are showing up, and I'll get another coat of this paint on. That looks pretty good. Now I'm just hitting it very lightly with some of that black, and we can see it deepens it up, and I'm getting that perfect burgundy color that I'm looking for, and I can still see just a touch of that silver paint coming through, exactly what I'm looking for. After a nice little lunch break, this 1/8 inch press board is all dry, and I've got the texture and the colors that'll be perfect for this project. I ran test cuts on all 4 different materials, and when I got good settings, I wrote those down on the little piece of work material that I'll be using later on in Lightburn software. The X40 Max laser module did an excellent job easily cutting through all the materials in today's project. And it's time to load in the first piece of material. I'll move the laser module somewhere in the middle and take the included height gauge with the machine and set the height with the turn dial on the top of the machine to get that perfect laser focus. That looks good. I'm going to see that I've got the first layer here. That is going to be the outside of the shield there, and I'm going to move that in. I'm going to select the outside edge, and I'm going to move that over to layer 02. Personally, I always like to use this as a cut layer. It just makes my process flow a lot easier. And for the shield buttons, I'm gonna move that over to layer 02 as well. And I'm gonna reference that little cutout piece that we just saw, and I'm gonna type those numbers in, and I think we'll be ready to get started with the first cutout here. And next, this step is going to be true for all the different layers. After I move the laser module by hand, I'm going to re-home it. And then I'm going to frame the project, making sure that the laser travels over the material at all times and everything is looking good. We see there's a hose hanging down from the top of the screen. That's going to be my exhaust hose, and normally it's just laying across the table, but for this video I wanted to make sure that that wasn't laying across the table, but we're going to be picking up all that smoke from all the cutting. And here's the cutout. Apparently I had the camera set up, but I never hit the record button. It's time to load in the next sheet of material, and once again, I'll move the laser module around in the middle and take the height gauge and place that underneath, and use the turn dial on the top of the laser module and get that perfect focus. Back inside Lightburn, I'm ready to take this layer 1 that we just cut, and now I can move that layer number 2 back into the work area. I'm going to select the outermost edge and the innermost edge by holding the shift key, and I'm going to put that over on my cut layer 02 and type in the settings from that test piece that we saw earlier. While I'm doing that, the blue circles, those are going to be just a line engraving. We're going to see that coming up in just a second here, and here we go. Just a nice little scribed line to help me place those buttons on the shield after everything's been painted. Here we go, we're making the first pass, and we're kicking off a bit of smoke, and we can see it's drifting up towards my exhaust hose that I have. And this machine does an excellent job when doing multiple passes. It does a perfect repeat of each pass, so I don't get any double lines. And this thing has just been really consistent for me. After a couple passes, we're moving on to the outside exterior cut line, and just look at how razor thin that line is. Now it's time to pull this second material out, and I got one little spot where it hangs up just at the very top there, and that piece comes off. Now it's time to take out the interior piece, and we're gonna see that there's 2 hang spots, but they're all in one aligned with one another, and that's pretty common with cheaper materials, but you know what? It's what I had on hand. After all of that cutting, I couldn't remember the last time I checked the lens on my laser module, so I thought I'd take a quick break and check that out. Well, that thing is as clean as it could ever be. It looks brand new. So it's time to go back in and load the next piece of material, and this one's going to be some more buttons to cut out. That first piece that we cut out for the main base of the shield, that material was too thick, so I went back to some other material, and I'm going to type in some settings here for some 1/4 inch material, and I'll start getting those cut out. Well, look at this thing. This machine just makes quick work of cutting materials out. It's just really a joy to watch this thing. And we'll see how well this removes, and check that out. It lifts right out. That material is really high quality, and this is the result as we get really clean, awesome cutouts. Now it's time to load in the last piece of material, that 1/8 inch press board, and of course I'm going to be setting the focus. And instead of using the lower step of the focusing gauge, we're going to see that I use the upper step, and that's because this material is so much thinner. Little turn of the dial, and focus is set. I can grab those dots I just cut, move those back off to the side, and now I'm ready to take the Crest shield here and put that back into the work area. We're just about done with all the cutting and engraving. I'm going to switch that over to my cut layer, and once again type in all the settings off of that test cut sample that I made much earlier. I'm going to take the Dragon, and I think, keep that just on the same layer. I'm just gonna switch it over to a fill engraving for today's video and type in the settings that I think I'd like to have on here. Everything else here looks pretty good, and ready to place that image inside of the crest here, and we'll zoom in and get a better look here. And I can kind of move this around by eye to get the best look that I want, or I can select both objects and I can click on that bullseye up there, and it's gonna perfectly center everything up. And even though it's perfectly centered, I don't like the way that looks, so I'm gonna move it a little bit. If I hold down the shift, we'll see that I can constrain it to all those different lines, and I'm just gonna freely move that around, and I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna keep it like that, and we're gonna check out the preview here and see that this is gonna take a bit longer at over an hour, about an hour and 15 minutes, but we're gonna get all of that beautiful detail in there. I think it's going to be well worth the engraving time. And here we go, we're started with our nice engraving, and this machine is moving along pretty quickly, and we'll just do a little montage of this being engraved for a little bit here. While the engraving is taking place, and I do have line of sight of that, by the way, I'm gonna get some of the cutouts cleaned up. And the first thing I'm gonna do is toss down my trusty foam pad while I'm working on the garage floor again. And I wanna clean up this top surface. For that, I'm gonna use a random orbit sander. It makes quick work of this. And I wanna clean up, hopefully, that line that's in the top there. And just a couple quick sanding is all I'm going to be able to do, because the top layer of this wood is very, very thin, and I don't want to break through that. That side's all done, and since I'm here, I'll flip it over and do the back side and hit this in a couple different spots and move the sander all around, and this is nice and smooth. What I want to do next is use some LA's Totally Awesome and clean up the outside charring that I might have on any of the wood. I don't want to pick up any of that charring and then accidentally transfer it over to the wood that I just cleaned up with the sander. I'm going to grab a towel and get that damp, and then spritz a couple sprays of that LA's Totally Awesome. Just wipe down the outside edge, and I can check to see if I'm picking up any of that charring. And here I've rinsed the towel off, and I'm just washing the entire piece down front and back, and this looks pretty good. And I'll set this off to the side to dry. And next up is the shield frame, and same thing as before. I know that towel looks really dirty. It looks dirty on the camera, but in real life it's much cleaner. Here, I decided I'm just gonna spray down the entire work surface and just remove any of that cutting residue smoke off the top surface. And the backside looks okay. And a couple spritzes on the towel again, and now I'm gonna go around and get the inside edge cleaned up. I always find this stuff just a simple task, but very relaxing. And we'll see every once in a while I'm looking at the towel to see if I'm picking up any char, and it's been pretty clean. I'm not really sure that I needed to do this step. That laser machine from Atomstack is doing a really good job, a great job of cutting cleanly through all of the wood. Once again, I'm gonna rinse that towel down in the bucket there and get any of that cleaner off, and I'm gonna go back and completely wipe down this work, making sure that I don't have any of that cleaner, because it does have a yellow tint that can kind of stain some lighter colored woods. So this is a good way to make sure that everything stays the natural wood color that it should be. Well, I'm working along on my project, and I'm looking at the buttons that will eventually go on that shield frame. And here I've got the thicker ones, and they're just too thick. Those buttons, once again, are going to go on those scribed lines that we did earlier. And I just don't even like the second batch that I cut out. These are still too thick. Those were 1/4 inch thick. So I went and found a piece of 1/8 inch ply that I have, and I'm gonna cut a set of those out off camera. It's gonna be all the same principles, but I think that lower profile is gonna look much better on this shield frame. I wanna share a project that I've got coming up, and following the castle theme with the shield here, I've got this cutout that I made, and I've got a video coming up with this. And the really cool thing about this project is everything that we see here is all modular. These are all different pieces or blocks that I kind of stuck together in Lightburn software to make this up. I can make this castle look like anything that I want. I can make it smaller, or in that video coming up, I'm gonna make a huge scale of this, and it's gonna be a lot of fun, and hopefully that'll be out by the end of the year, so keep an eye out on that. It's gonna be a really fun video and a really fun project. Our engraving is just about done, and we're gonna be doing the cutout for this, and the cutout shouldn't take too long because this was only one pass for this 1/8 inch press board. Check this out, good clean cut, just a little dap there. Get that out of the way. And let's get a better look at this. Oh, that is perfect. That is exactly what I was looking for today's project. This is gonna look so good once everything is all completed. Now to clean this crest up with all of that engraving smoke across the top, I'm gonna just spray down the whole entire surface with that LA's Totally Awesome, and just give that just about maybe 5 to 10 seconds to soak in. And then I'm going to immediately take a garden hose and start spraying off all of that cleaner and all of that residue. Look at all that stuff wash away. And of course, I've got a clean, dry towel. I'm gonna dap all of that extra water off, but check this out. Now with all that smoke residue gone, this thing is really starting to pop out. Here's the layup of the project without any glue, and this is looking pretty cool. We're gonna get some paint on this yet and get this project finished off. For this outside frame, I'm gonna use a base coat of that silver Ironlak paint. I'm gonna put a coat or two of that on. I'm gonna follow that up with some Krylon Fusion metallic paint because I want that outside frame to have kind of like a metallized look to it. I move on to the buttons here. These buttons, they're just, they've got no profile or rounded edge to them, so I'm gonna be sanding those edges down. And these I think I'm gonna paint these black first, and of course I'm gonna reach for some black Ironlak paint, get a coat or two of that on. And then to finish it off, I'm going to use some gold rub-in buff, and I'm just gonna get like a texturized look to it. The Atomstack X40 Max has done an awesome job cutting and engraving everything out on this project. It's been a really easy and fun machine to operate. However, I'm moving on to painting the project, so it's gonna be time to move the laser machine off the table and get my paint booth set up. We'll make some room here and get started doing some painting. And here's my paint booth. Up in the corner off screen, there is an exhaust port inside of my cardboard box paint booth with a high velocity exhaust fan to get the fumes out of the work area. But this Ironlak silver paint, this stuff just goes on. I mean, just look at this. I'm spraying it on and it stays on the surface. If I was using enamel-based paint, it would soak into the wood and I'd have to put so many coats of paint on. But this Ironlak being acrylic base sits on the surface, it doesn't seep into the wood too much, and it's really great for these wood projects. I flipped that frame around and now it's time to hit it with a second coat of paint. We're also seeing that I'm spraying the inside edge of the frame. And now it's time to move on to that Krylon Fusion metallic oil rubbed bronze paint. And this is gonna give me the final look that I want. Just just a light coating of this going all the way around the outside edge once again. Just hitting that inside edge. This paint does take a little bit longer to dry, so it's time to just take a little break and chill out for a little bit while that dries off. In the meantime, I'm going to take all of these little buttons and I'm going to take some sandpaper that I had lying around and just kind of break those outside edges. And I'm going to find out here in a second, this is going to take forever. That wood is a little bit harder than I thought, so I'm going to put my thinking cap on and go and figure something else out. All right, I got some more aggressive sandpaper and I found a dowel that I'm going to use to stick onto the bottoms of those, and I was trying to figure out some type of a glue, and I decided that I would use some hot melt glue. It's going to stick it on there really good, but I can still peel it off. I thought about using some super glue, but you know, that stuff is so strong, it's going to be the hot melt glue that I'm going to end up using. Just a little dab there and we'll stick that down. We get a nice view of the back of my hand there. After that sets up for just a short little time, now I can take that more aggressive sandpaper. I think it's 100 grit now. I got a nice handle for those little buttons. Well, that one turned out pretty good. It's still just taking much longer than I want it to, so we're gonna throw a power drill to it and get these things done quite a bit faster. And oh yeah, this is working so much better. It's gonna make really quick work of all these little buttons there. That is the rounded over edge that I'm looking for. Just another dab there, and I've got 8 of these that I made up. I only needed 7, but you know, if I make 8 of them, I won't lose one of them. But if I make 7, I'll end up dropping one of them and have to go back and cut another one out. So 8 it is. And now we're just gonna hit this with some of that black paint. And by the way, I'm still waiting for that Crest to dry a little bit more that we were painting with that Krylon paint. The Krylon paint is good, but it just takes so long to dry. And once again, this Ironlak, it dries pretty quickly and it allows me to get a lot done in the shop and keep things moving along. One more spray on this back side and be ready to set this off to the side for a few minutes and let that dry. And well, it's been a few minutes and now I can hit it with some rub and buff. And this stuff does clean up with mineral spirits, or I can thin it out, but I'm going to use it at full strength. And I originally thought I was going to use that foam brush, but I opted to use just a cheap paint brush that I think is really getting the look that I want. I don't want that gold to completely cover those buttons. I do want that black base color to kind of shine through a little bit. And this is perfect. This is the look that I'm trying to get with this, just to have something that looks a little bit weathered. All the paint is dry and now it's ready to glue the frame of the shield down to the base of the shield. And I think for that, there's a lot of choices for glue out there. I've got some Quick Grip from Beacon. This stuff works pretty well. It dries incredibly fast. It is waterproof and paintable. I also have some 5-minute epoxy from JB Weld, and I think for this project I'm going to use the 5-minute epoxy. The Quick Grip, it just dries too quickly. 5-minute epoxy it is. When I go to glue the buttons down, I am going to be using that Quick Grip. Got a little mixing pad and 4 clamps, and a quick search reveals my shop has a whole bunch of these spring clamps everywhere, so I'm going to be all set to start mixing up some glue and getting this outside frame clamped down. To start out with, I'm just going to dribble the glue down on the frame here, and then I'm going to go back and kind of flatten it out with this aluminum business card that I have as part of a sample pack with one of the machines that I received. And here, I'm ready to place that down and nudge everything into place so it's just perfectly aligned. When I spread that glue out, I made sure it was closer to the outside of the shield, so it maybe if it had to leak out, it would leak out on the outside edge and not towards the inside. And these spring clamps do an excellent job. I think I've got enough of them on there. I'll give this a little while for it to set up. I find with the epoxy glues that it sets in about 5 minutes, but it takes a little bit longer, so I like to keep that mixing pad off to the side, and I check that to make sure that the glue is fully set up before I start removing all the clamps. And we're going to do the same thing for the crest of the shield. I'll put an ample amount of glue down and make sure it's thoroughly mixed up, and I'll just start dabbing and swirling that around eventually on the back of the crest. Get a couple globs down and I'll smooth that out. Got that placed down there, and we're going to watch the camera go in and out of focus. I'm going to measure both sides to make sure I've got a nice even reveal. Then that looks good, and I'm going to take a couple sandbags that I have and carefully place those on top, making sure I've got a nice even pressure. And we've got to move that one a little bit so we have room for this third sandbag. And once again, we'll give this ample time to set up. And while that's going on, I'm going to take that quick grip and put just a little dab of that down, and now I can start gluing on all of the golden buttons around the outside of the shield. I think it's a really nice touch on this project. Longer projects like this, I just really enjoy them. I like being out in the laser shop and just kind of tuning everything out that's going on in the world and just focusing on a simple task of gluing little buttons down and just watching something that I've created come to shape with all of the different cutouts that we did and all the different colors. And I think I'm gonna let this sit overnight, let everything fully cure before coming back the next morning. Whoa, check this out. This looks so good. This is exactly what I was looking for. Now to finish everything up, the outside edge, I'm gonna get that cleaned up a little bit with some black rub and buff mixed with a tiny little bit of silver rub and buff to give it, again, that kind of a metallic theme. And to finish everything off, a couple coats of Minwax polyurethane is gonna seal everything in and give it just a nice lustrous look. And here we go, we've got everything is all complete. It's got the polyurethane on it, and let's just take a nice look at today's project. This was certainly a great time creating this project, even though it took quite a while to get everything cut out and painted and the glue drying. I just found it very relaxing, almost therapeutic to just kind of tune the rest of the world out and just concentrate on my project, the different layers, the different colors I'm using, the different graphic that I'd like to use in the Crest. And I hope that you find the same enjoyment in the projects that you create. I hope that you'll help support the Laser channel by giving this video a like, subscribe to the channel, or ring that notification bell. Not only is it a great way to help the Laser channel grow, it's an excellent way to connect video content like this with other great viewers just like you. Well, until we meet again in the next video, learn, create, and share.